Hello, I'm Stephanie Brocklehurst and I am a PhD candidate in the Department of Women's Studies and Feminist Research at the University of Western Ontario. Within the context of urban revitalization, I am interested in exploring how local entrepreneurs discursively rebrand and reimagine their idealized consumer and how this works to directly and indirectly dispossess and displace the existing community. This paper is shaped by understandings of neoliberal responsibilization of the entrepreneurial city and the entrepreneurial self. I provide the examples of 3 local entrepreneurial business websites to examine how rebranding a space and reimagining a population begins with discursive processes of erasure and rendering. In 2018, the incoming mayor of London, Ontario, a mid-sized urban centre 2 hours from both Toronto and Detroit, spoke of the importance of regeneration of the city's most stigmatized neighborhood, resituating it as a community hub with a unique character, promising that it would become a distinct destination that will draw visitors. The mayor's rebranding aspirations are directed at a disinvested area within the downtown core known as East of Adelaide, colloquially referred to as EOA, invoking the idiom DOA, dead on arrival. This term speaks powerfully to the ways in which the place and the people who inhabit it are assumed to be in need of revitalization. EOA is known for its disproportionate number of residents who live in poverty and established associations of criminality and social disorder. The streetscape presently reflects a place and a population in flux as open drug use, a preponderance of check cashing stores, and faded pawn shops are interspersed with newer cafes, a liquor distillery, and other incubator businesses spawned through entrepreneurial incentives as the city works to reinvent itself. The success of the city is tied to the responsibilization of its citizens. The entrepreneurial self is responsibilized to be autonomous and self-sufficient whilst being morally obligated toward broader economic and political goals. They are expected to become entrepreneurs of the self, succeeding through initiative and risk-taking, proving themselves to be flexible enough to adapt to changing work organization, competitive and resilient, tolerant of precarious employment. Making an enterprise of oneself is valorized and establishes one's validity as a productive member of society. As McEachern et al. Note, this idealized citizen allows labor to be framed as marketable human capital and exist as a one-person small business endeavor, either literally or figuratively, as part of the larger enterprise. Entrepreneurial citizens are positively identified by their economic productivity, financial self-sufficiency, and ability to contribute to the ideals and revenues of a consumerist society. This citizen subject contrasts with individuals who are welfare dependent, underemployed, or work outside of the formal market economy, who are judged poorly for failing to self-manage in a way that strengthens the economy. The failed neoliberal citizen is marked as lacking entrepreneurial ambition and moral worth. They are further homogenized as a threat to the city's advancement and to the well-being of the population. The successful neoliberal entrepreneurial city, like the successful neoliberal entrepreneurial citizen, is also required to be autonomous and responsible. David Harvey argues that cities formerly managed by higher levels of government are now expected to be economically and socially self-sufficient while simultaneously stimulating national prosperity and the country's international profile by fostering local development through entrepreneurialism. Quote, thanks to intense economic competition and neoliberal policy directives from state and federal governments, cities must now be sophisticated entrepreneurs doing what it takes to lure wealthy investors, residents, and tourists to town. Harvey regards the entrepreneurial approach as an organizational shift from a managerial one, where governments previously focused on the provision of services and facilities for urban populations, to one where the state withdraws social supports, opens up opportunities for big business, and downloads responsibility to citizens and cities. The dismantling of the welfare state by neoliberal governments is intended to foster personal responsibility for individual and collective bodies. And to this end, the state's role is merely to ensure and maximize opportunities for entrepreneurship, competition, and profit in the economic and public sectors. Municipalities become hyper-focused on growing the local economy and seek ways to establish or highlight the unique cultural appeal of their city, often broadcasting their plans in ways intended to engender civic pride and a sense of unity. London's own revitalisation plan emphasises the fiscal risk of not portraying the right impression, stating to send the image of a declining city to prospective new businesses undercuts our economic competitiveness with other cities and weakens our competitive position for attracting and retaining a talented workforce in London and the innovation that follows them. As an entrepreneurial city, London, Ontario has created narratives of rebranding of the core area and the much maligned EOA neighbourhood. The east of Adelaide area is now referred to in all municipal planning and promotional literature as the Old East Village, and in 2006 received a cultural heritage designation, at once erasing its present impoverishment and gilding its industrialized past. The choice to recreate vintage cast iron street signs and architectural plans showing the 19th century styling of storefront and lighting details reinforce and idealize history. Reimagining the existing space as something new begins with the process of social rendering, which refers to the erasure of the existing community and the reimagining of an alternative one, conforming to cultural and economic constructions of privilege, race, and class. Collectively, the multiple meanings of rendering convey the sense of something being recreated, drawn, or interpreted in ways that obscure or make invisible what was there before. In the context of urban revitalization, rendering often follows many decades of devalorization and decline, and a city's decision to gentrify rather than improve the neighborhood for the existing residents. When redevelopment focus is directed toward an imagined community, toward reification and facade, and the commodification of the built environment, much needed resources are diverted from the existing one, pushing marginalized populations beyond peripheral vision and into a blind spot, serving as a disciplinary mechanism by rendering them null and void. Responsibility for revamping a city's image is distributed through the creation of multiple administrative layers, each tasked with various forms of rebranding and marketing. Assigned by the state to generate greater revenue, the municipal government establishes public-private partnerships, often directed by business improvement associations, to enact the privatization of public services such as sanitation, street maintenance, and policing. All efforts are directed toward creating the perception of a safe, livable, pedestrian-friendly, and creative space that is attractive to entrepreneurial businesses and consumers. Ilken refers to these assemblages of authority as the privatization of responsibility. She sees it revealed in the entrepreneurship of autonomous actors such as individuals, families, firms and corporations, and non-governmental organizations. All carry out the bidding of the state under the guise of personal autonomy. The local merchant is an important actor in this assemblage, and businesses have been heavily incentivized to move into the east of Adelaide neighbourhood through startup grants, entrepreneurial supports, and increased promotion through local print media. Union 10 is one such enterprise in the east of Adelaide neighbourhood, where through a multi-million-dollar investment, a used furniture store has been converted into a liquor distillery, restaurant, and event space. The distillery is one of several new artisanal businesses that produce and sell alcohol, contributing to the street being celebrated by the Old East Villages Business Association as a libation district. Artisanal is a frequent descriptor, and craft breweries and liquor distilleries are common vehicles used to elevate the leisure and consumption experienced in revitalized spaces from ordinary to exceptional. Both index a unique and refined product for the unique and discerning customer who can afford the elevated price point. The exterior facade of the new EOA businesses is also intentionally upmarket from the existing storefronts in both scale and style. The Union 10 distillery makes a bold visual statement on an understated street. It sits in stark contrast to its neighbours, and it is antithetical to the functionality of the London Intercommunity Health Centre that serves as medical and social support for London's most marginalised populations, and whose main waiting area overlooks the distillery. Many of the health centre's clients require treatment for substance addiction, including alcoholism. New merchants regard themselves as vital additions to the community, embracing ideals of both responsibilization and entrepreneurialism through their contribution to the economic growth of the city and the redevelopment of the disinvested area. Union 10 situate their success as key to the success of the city. The owner states, with the redevelopment of the existing property, Union 10 has made a significant change in a very positive way. It has become a community resource. Other newer EOA merchants emphasize their contribution and commitment to the community through a narrative of belonging, being local, buying local, and even in the case of OEV Fitness, of sweating local. The Root Cellar, a self-described farm-to-fork, plough-to-pint, cooperatively owned organic restaurant, was an early starter in the revitalization of the East of Adelaide neighbourhood, and through its website positions itself as a resident, proudly working in the neighbourhood we live and love, and committed to reinvigorating the community. There is consistency with which the new EOA businesses claim commitment to the community whilst discursively differentiating their brand toward the reimagined customer base rather than the existing residents. The Union 10 website, for example, includes a list of drinks and an accompanying explanation about what each drink says about the consumer. They equate drinking shots with students and the hallmark of, quote, the sloppy drunk, and state, drinking lower-end liquor will put you on the bartender's shame list. The point of the list is to clearly signal the type of customer they want to attract. The same is true of the promotional video for the Root Cellar, that includes a server who describes their typical patrons as people who are writing books, finishing documentaries, and grant proposals for their music. In these examples, the businesses clearly identify the idealized consumer through their refined taste, and in so doing, dissuade the, quote, sloppy drunk or the person who enjoys a Big Mac rather than a water buffalo burger from patronizing their premises. Harvey refers to this form of rendering of a community as the architecture of play and pleasure of spectacle and commodification, emphasizing fiction and fantasy, replacing that of function. The newly minted Old East Village has been completely reimagined as a middle-class retreat for leisure and recreation in more ways than just the storefronts, menus, and creative class consumers. It is an ideological reimagining and a fantastical retreat from present-day realities. Escape from present-day realities is exemplified in the website of Whistling Dick's, a barbershop and bar that opened in the East of Adelaide neighbourhood in 2018. Its website, replete with images of leather chairs, hunting trophies, straight-edge razor blades, and cigars, exudes hegemonic masculinity. The owners reveal that they decided to open the Shaves and Suds shop after having, quote, made some astonishingly astute observations about the decline of masculine identity that had befallen society, and wondered where men can go these days to just be themselves. The language on Whistling Dick's website fashions the store as a time machine for males who have tired of political correctness, lamenting that somewhere along this road it has become politically offensive to be masculine. Our language and culture have become more genderless with every passing year, and gender bias is shunned like profanity among virgin ears. Through text and photographs, business owners such as those of Whistling Dick's are able to discursively construct a powerful rhetorical image of their desired customer and delivering an immersive experience for their pleasure. The business states that they are more than a barber shop and less than politically correct, in order to appeal to the disenfranchised male who wants to retreat to a place where men can be men. Finding a niche market and focusing on a specific identity may prove to be useful for business, but it is also a deliberate strategy of exclusion. In conclusion, new entrepreneurial merchants situate themselves as investors in disadvantaged neighborhoods, purporting to be committed to community regeneration. However, the branding as demonstrated by their websites, storefronts, services, products, and prices tells a very different story, one that confirms that redeveloped spaces are not intended for the poor. Using tactics of distancing and difference, entrepreneurs employ discursive and visual cues that overwhelmingly project a middle and upper middle class and usually white target demographic. The use of a discursively reimagined citizen consumer excludes and erases existing residents and translates into a mechanism of displacement of the lower class. Research that examines displacement in gentrified communities indicates that although direct eviction occurs, many more marginalized individuals are indirectly displaced through practices of alienation when their neighborhood is deliberately redesigned to no longer meet their practical and social support needs. Moving forward, further critical discourse analysis directed at the role of middle-level actors, such as local merchants, can usefully illuminate disciplinary and regulatory processes at play that are less commonly explored. This will take on more importance as ongoing retrenchment of the role of the state results in increased community-based responsibilization for the city's success. Thank you for listening to my presentation today.